I know how I feel about this book, but I'm concerned that this book is also some sort of weird foretelling of our crazy dystopian future, as all books by Agustina Bastarrica seem to be, in the worst way possible and in the best literary way possible. Because, without faith, there is no refuge. Hi, YouTube. There is little that reminds me of the Zagreb film for The Mask of the Red Death other than the original work by Poe. There is a polluted way this animation looks and how a sickness can spread through a desolate wasteland. I'll link the full video to this animation in the description of this video because the oil animation was super formative for me, and it has like a very surrealist style with horrifying undertones of the original novel that really shone through in this animation. And I feel like The Unworthy has the same vibe. I want to quickly thank bookshop.org for allowing me to have an online bookshop that supports local independent bookstores. And if you purchase The Unworthy and Agustina Bastarrica's other novels through my affiliate link, you can support this channel. This book is so much less of a book or a novel and more like a fictional collection of undated diary pages from a woman that is confined to a convent of the Sacred Sisterhood. Right outside the convent is a post-apocalyptic world where the modern world has collapsed and ruin has just taken over. And I feel like this was made by the author to speak on many topics that are actually really topical right now without the book feeling dated. I hope that I can write this script without spoilers, but there's a dense prose here that is hard to speak on without spoiling it. So there's a good chance that I'm going to have spoilers littered in here, but I'm not going to talk on them too heavily and more talk on the themes and everything about this book. Hopefully it won't be too spoilery. This novel was written in a very, I want to say, almost eclectic way. They just talk in a way that you would see in something like a Bible. And unlike Tender the Flesh, which is Bastarrica's other novel, where Tender the Flesh was written extremely clinically and just, it was almost unnerving how clinical you could talk about cannibalism, but this one has a similar vibe to exactly what genre it is, which is like post-apocalyptic cult diary thing. This book has a weird way of making the main character sound like a raving mad woman, and it just, there's text that's scratched out, there's things that just seem not okay with her, because you can see her scratching out thoughts that are like feel blasphemous, or if somebody were to find said thoughts, they would probably condemn her for them. So she would scratch them out, and she would even like scratch out like words like woods. They don't want to acknowledge that there's a woods and then the wall that keeps all of the people out of the cloister, basically. And it's visually interesting. I know that many people say that this book is infuriating to them, and I can see where that is the case for this main character. In the beginning, you can see that this is a convent full of people who are just trying to bully their way to the top to become one of the enlightened. Our main character will sew cockroaches into people's pillowcases so they slowly come out of the sewing holes and drives the other people in the convent insane. And she also would try to figure out how to torture her fellow unworthy, and it's really hard to stomach a lot of the time because it just kind of sounds like bullying, but contextually you can tell that it was because the main character is brainwashed by this cult. I don't think the description of how she writes these diary entries does it justice either. On the back of the book, it says she basically writes this diary in any substance she can find, including her own blood, which is a talking point to get people interested, but at the same time, it feels like it's like supposed to be edgy or something, where it's like this surface level edginess. Oh, I'm gonna write this in my own blood or whatever. But it's the main purpose of her writing these memoirs in whatever substance she can find, ash, her blood, ink that she found, is because the cult in the book is basically suppressing women's agency, and writing is one of the things that are forbidden. That's why I assume the author of the diary herself never names herself in these entries, because if she were to write her name down on the paper, she would get in trouble. So that's my assumption of why the main character never is named in the book. If you take everything in the beginning with a grain of salt, it makes it easier to go through the first half, because the second half of the book is where the main character is starting to wake up to the horrors of the inside of this convent, because it's not just a bunch of normal nuns. In fact, the Sacred Sisterhood is often denouncing the Christian version of the Bible, which in using terms such as the erroneous God, the false son, and the negative mother. And I believe that is to denounce Christianity in favor of the Sacred Sisterhood. I feel like that's a way that eliminates the past teaching of the traditional Christian church into the religious dystopian cult church that's seen here. The turning point of this book is, like I said, right in the middle, when the new woman shows up from beyond the wall and starts like turning everything up on its head. She's beautiful, strong-willed, even though she's dealing with a bunch of crap because everybody's still brainwashed, so they all bully her. I feel like that's what the beginning is setting up for. Like, so you know what the brainwashed feels, and how Lucia, the given name of the new woman who's come over the wall, how Lucia is going to be treated the whole time while the main character doesn't see her or anything like that. While in the presence of Lucia, the narrator seems to be remembering her past and everything that was wrong that's happened with her up to this point, where she will actually reflect on her past versus just kind of remembering the cult. And that's it. The ending is not surprising in this book. There's a lot of icky feelings you get from the characters, especially the ones that are in a higher presence than the unworthy despite everything. And the ending is a bit predictable. There are heavy ties to why the women, especially the enlightened, are horribly mutilated in the name of holiness, quote unquote. I also want to compliment Sarah Moses, the translator of this book and all of Bastarika's novels so far. I think there's a certain finesse that is required to properly handling tone from one language to another, which Moses seems to really hit that right on the head, because Tender is the Flesh and The Unworthy are so different in tone that it's very impressive that they're able to bring that tone over from each novel. This book is not the conventional type of horror where there's a monster to kill or anything like that. It's the type of narrative that people fear when it's the end of the world and you don't know what kind of horrible things horrible people are willing to inflict on others, because this book has a lot of torture. It has bug stuff. It has animal death and essay on page, to name a few things. So it's difficult to say if I would recommend this for everybody. So please be aware of these content warnings, because these 4 warnings do not do enough to warn everybody about the content of this book. It's very, I'm saying this in a very vague way, but if those 4 content warnings already raise red flags for you, I would not suggest this book. I think you need to be looking for a very specific type of writing and narrative to enjoy this book. And because of that, I only can give this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I do think it's good and it's narratively poignant, but it could disturb some people, and the non-chapter transitions can be very jarring. But I do believe that's on purpose because it's supposed to be a non-dated journal. The fact that I can't rightfully suggest this to a wider audience makes me want to put it lower on the list. That's why it's only a 3 out of 5. If these things are interesting to you, or any of the things that I've talked about is interesting to you, I think you'd love this book. I feel like you would either love this book or hate this book because it's extremely polarizing. It's not for everybody. I don't know. There's just so much in this book that I feel like needs to be touched on, because I forgot that there's a lot of misogyny in this book too, and there's roving bandits and stuff like that. So, like I said, it's polarizing. If any of these things resonate with you, or you're interested in reading a post-apocalyptic world where women are now nuns because they're afraid of the outside world, this book might be for you. If you want to see more of me, I stream most weeknights on twitch.tv/serial eater. If you want to know a more in-depth schedule, that'll be on my card, and all of this is linked in the description below, along with my bookshop link. That was a lot. Do you want a better version of The Nun with less air eating and more horrifying themes than Spooky Ghost in the Corner? This might be your ticket. Not that Spooky Ghost isn't fun sometimes. This is just not that. It is definitely not that at all. So if you are looking for Spooky Ghost in the Corner, it's not that. Anyway, bye YouTube. See you next time. Bye bye.